The locker room echoed with careless laughter, the kind that comes from overconfidence and ignorance, as boots slammed against metal benches and rifles were tossed into racks without respect, and in the middle of that noise stood Lieutenant Sarah Hale, the newest transfer to the elite weapons training unit, her uniform still crisp, her rifle clean, and her eyes calm, while the others sized her up like an inconvenience rather than a soldier, whispering jokes about how she looked more like a clerk than a combat officer, mocking her silence, her height, even the way she checked her weapon twice before locking it, and when one of the senior trainees loudly joked that this wasn't a charity program for locker room decorations, the laughter grew louder, but Sarah said nothing, because she had learned long ago that real power doesn't announce itself, and as the team moved to the armory briefing, the men bragged about kill simulations, modified rifles, and past missions, completely unaware that Sarah had already served in classified weapons operations where mistakes cost lives, not pride, and when the instructor assigned live-fire drills with advanced combat rifles, the mockery continued as someone muttered that she'd probably flinch at recoil, yet Sarah calmly adjusted her gloves, mentally running ballistic calculations, wind drift memory, and muscle recall, knowing that this training ground was the same place where years earlier she had trained not as a cadet but as an observer during command evaluations, and as the locker room door closed behind them, the laughter still followed her, but so did something else they couldn't see yet, authority waiting for the right moment. On the firing range, where excuses disappear and weapons tell the truth, Sarah was assigned last, deliberately, as the others took turns showing off rapid-fire patterns and loud confidence, missing tight groupings while celebrating noise over precision, and when Sarah finally stepped forward, someone joked that she should start on beginner mode, but the range fell into an uneasy silence as she chose a standard-issue rifle instead of a modified one, checked the iron sights instead of optics, adjusted her stance with practiced precision, and fired not fast, not flashy but perfect, each round landing exactly where physics demanded, and as the targets were pulled back, murmurs replaced laughter because her grouping wasn't just tight, it was command-level accurate, the kind instructors see once in a generation, and when asked where she learned to shoot like that, Sarah simply said, "Field necessity," refusing to elaborate, while the weapons instructor quietly checked her service number twice, realizing it wasn't supposed to be on this roster at all, and when advanced drills began weapon malfunction recovery, blind reloads, stress firing under time pressure, Sarah moved like someone who had done this under real fire, not simulation, clearing jams by feel, controlling recoil without wasted motion, conserving ammunition like it mattered, because to her it always had, and though the locker room mockery faded into uncomfortable glances, no one apologized yet, because pride is slow to die, and they still didn't understand who she really was. By the third phase of training, when tactical leadership exercises began and squads were tested on decision-making under weapons pressure, Sarah was unexpectedly placed in charge after the assigned leader froze during a simulated ambush, and without raising her voice, without hesitation, she issued clear weapon commands, repositioned shooters, adjusted firing lanes, and neutralized threats with minimal ammo expenditure, completing the scenario faster and cleaner than any previous team, and as the after-action report was displayed, the instructor finally spoke the words that changed everything: "This officer isn't here to be evaluated, she's here to evaluate you," and the room went cold as files were unlocked, revealing that Sarah Hale was previously a classified unit commander, temporarily reassigned undercover to assess discipline, weapon handling, and leadership failures within the program, and the same men who mocked her locker room silence now realized their jokes had been recorded, their weapon negligence documented, and their arrogance noted, because the uniform she wore that day was intentionally plain, hiding the insignia she had earned through years of combat command, and as she listened without expression, the truth settled heavily over the group. They hadn't been laughing at a weak cadet, they had been disrespecting their future commander. The next morning, the locker room was silent, no laughter, no careless noise, as boots aligned neatly and rifles were handled with sudden respect, and when the door opened and Sarah entered, she was no longer wearing the plain trainee uniform, but the commander's uniform, insignia sharp, rank unmistakable, authority undeniable, and she didn't gloat, didn't remind them of their mockery, because real command doesn't need revenge, it needs results, and as she addressed them, her voice was calm but final, stating that weapons are extensions of discipline, that respect is part of combat readiness, and that under her command, arrogance would get people killed, not promoted. And the same locker room that once laughed now stood at attention, understanding that the uniform didn't give her power, it revealed it, and from that day forward, every weapon was checked twice, every order followed precisely, and every soldier remembered the lesson burned deeper than any drill: never judge a warrior by silence, because sometimes the quiet one is already the commander. Once Sarah Hale officially assumed command, the training intensity shifted from routine drills to low-pressure combat simulations designed to break weak leadership, and she wasted no time making it clear that rank without competence meant nothing under her authority, restructuring weapon teams, rotating shooters into unfamiliar roles, and forcing everyone to master not just their own rifle but every weapon in the unit, from designated marksman systems to close-quarters carbines, because she believed a commander should never rely on a single point of strength, and during a night exercise simulating a hostile compound breach, communication failed, visibility dropped, and the unit began to fracture under stress, but Sarah moved through the chaos with absolute clarity, issuing short weapon commands, repositioning fire support, and personally taking the most exposed angle, demonstrating that command was not about safety but responsibility. And when the exercise concluded with mission success and 0 simulated casualties, the same soldiers who once mocked her realized that her authority was forged not in offices but in environments where hesitation meant death, and for the first time, respect was no longer forced by insignia, it was earned through fire discipline, tactical intelligence, and leadership that functioned even when everything else failed. Weeks later, standing in the same locker room where the laughter had once echoed, Sarah addressed the unit one final time before deployment, reminding them that weapons are only as effective as the mindset behind them, and that underestimating a teammate is the fastest way to compromise a mission, because war does not care about ego, background, or appearances, only preparation and execution. And as she walked past the benches and weapon racks, her presence no longer triggered mockery but quiet focus, every soldier aware that they had witnessed the transformation of a lesson into command doctrine. And when she finished by saying, "The locker room didn't change because of my rank, it changed because of your awareness," the unit understood that the true weapon she had brought with her wasn't a rifle or authority, but discipline reinforced by example. And as the doors closed and the team prepared to move out, the story of the commander who was once mocked became a permanent reminder. Etched into their training culture, never confuse silence with weakness, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who knows exactly how the battle will end. As the unit prepared for its final evaluation before real-world deployment, higher command introduced an unannounced stress test designed to expose hidden weaknesses in weapon discipline and leadership integrity, and unlike previous simulations, this one removed comfort entirely, limited ammunition, no resupply, degraded comms, and conflicting intelligence feeds, conditions that historically caused even elite teams to collapse. But Sarah recognized the structure immediately because she had helped design similar tests years earlier, and instead of taking direct control, she stepped back just enough to let her officers lead while she observed weapon handling, decision speed, and emotional control under pressure, and when one squad attempted to conserve ammo by hesitating too long, she issued a single correction that prevented a simulated encirclement, proving that command presence doesn't require constant orders, only precise ones, and as the exercise unfolded, data revealed something unexpected. The same soldiers who once mocked her now outperformed previous record holders, executing reloads flawlessly, maintaining fire lanes, and protecting their weakest shooter without being told, and when the evaluation ended, the inspectors quietly noted that the locker room culture had been replaced by something rare: mutual accountability, an outcome no weapons system alone could achieve. Months later, after successful operations and a reputation that extended far beyond the training base, Sarah stood alone in the locker room one last time, listening not to laughter but to memory, aware that leadership is temporary but the habits it creates endure long after the commander leaves, and as new recruits entered the unit, unaware of the story behind the quiet disc.